class action against Toyota South Africa. This over the motor corporation allegedly converting panel vans meant for goods into minibus taxis. The attorneys charge that these panel vans have exposed thousands of passengers to substantial risk of death and injury. Now, last year, Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula started the process of removing illegally converted vans. To talk to us through this class action, I'm joined now in studio by attorney at Richards Sport Incorporated, Alex Spoor. Alex, it's good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, this is a matter that has come to the attention, I believe, of the Department of Transport in 2009. But from documentation, Toyota South Africa has been aware of this since 2005. And of course, last year in March, the public protector also weighing in on this, saying indeed Toyota South Africa knew very well that this was a vehicle that was meant for goods, but they converted this knowingly into transporting at least 16 passengers at a time, endangering their lives because first and foremost, the seats were not properly secured because they're not built for that, but also you don't have seat belts as well that are properly designated in the right place. I mean, what are the key pillars of your case?
Thabo, so our case, we have been briefed by a number of taxi owners in this instance who've had their vehicles, whose vehicles are essentially now worthless. Yeah. They cannot travel on the roads. They have now been marked by the Department of Transport and they are stopped, removed and impounded. Now, these taxi owners bought vehicles often off Toyota dealerships themselves, thinking these were Toyota Quantum panel vans, only to find out that a vehicle which is only suitable to transport 3 people had been modified to transport 15. So these are people, this is the taxi industry, people who have been left destitute, essentially, with these vehicles that are worthless.
Yeah. In a letter that was issued by the dealer manager at the time, I think it was Anton Labeskagni, to some of the dealers of Toyota, he's warning them that they are possibly contravening the homologation regulation?
Yes.
I think that's what it's called.
Yes.
And he then puts in 3 ways in which they can get around this. He says the vehicle must be licensed and registered before the conversion is done, but 2, clients need to know and acknowledge that Toyota South Africa will not be held liable, and of course they must be made aware that the warranty will be affected. In other words, indicating to an extent to me that the taxi owners themselves knew about these conversions before they were made, or at least I'm assuming that the dealer would have alerted them that we are making these conversions. Why are they saying today they were not made aware of it?
So that letter is very important because it tells us from at least 2005, Toyota South Africa knew it was putting vehicles on the road which were not in line with the homologation regulations. Certain vehicles can be changed to passenger use. But to do that, to have a vehicle that can carry 16 people, there are a great deal of standards that must be applied. These vehicles, Toyota, built in Japan, go through rigorous safety standards. What we have here is from the dealership floor, we have a panel van. This has got a thin floor at the base. Right. There's no supporting beams to which seats can be bolted. Right. The seats were literally stuck in, drilled into the thin film base. These seat belts need to be bolted to a floor that has the support. These were bolted to the seats. In the accidents, as you say, we could see the seats almost ripped off. A panel van is, as it says, a panel van for carrying goods. They would cut out windows, MIBs, vehicle homologators essentially, cut out these sides, weakening the structural frame of the vehicle. These vehicles also have no rollover cage, so they are a tin can on wheels. So Toyota knew about these dangers from 2005. Now, for Toyota, an international corporation, to put up its hands and say, well, this good, taxi owners came and they sort of signed away a waiver. It's not our fault for the death and carnage that would foreseeably result here, for the loss that would foreseeably result. for putting a good that they knew would not be used for its intended purpose is ludicrous.
Yeah. You've got the Department of Transport itself putting these panel vans into the eNaTIS system, but registering them as mini buses. I'm sure they've got a case to answer here. Not only that, the banks that finance these vehicles also have got a case to answer here.
Certainly there is a complex web of regulatory failure, corporate greed, that has resulted in these thousands of panel vans in our roads and many hundreds, if not thousands, of deaths and injuries. Government, from the Public Protector's report, needs to come to the table. The Public Protector has called for stakeholders to find a way to resolve this. We are hopeful that government will do more to remove these vehicles off the road and ensure that compensation is provided here. But our case here is really at the moment centers around Toyota's failures and Toyota's liability. And in that instance, what we are hoping to do, our intention is to write to Toyota South Africa, put them on terms, get them to understand that what they have done is clearly unacceptable. They need to reach agreement with the taxi owners, and if there is a failure to reach that agreement, our intention then is to move ahead with a class action.
So what has happened so far with those vehicles? Because the Minister, of course, says about 1,000 of them were already impounded and were actually taken for destruction. Do the taxi owners get their deposits back?
To date, no, that's not the case. What happens is the taxi owners, either they have the taxi impounded or they have to leave their vehicle at home. If they travel on the road, they risk having the vehicle impounded. There you get impounding fees and other sort of costs. But essentially, we have people who have been left destitute. There is a broader taxi industry. The taxi industry is, successful black business in South Africa, and there's a lot of small-scale black business people who own 1 or 2 taxis. And when you lose that business unit, well, to replace that taxi can cost you R500,000 rand. So we have a number of clients who are essentially have been left destitute through this process.
Do we know how many of these vehicles were converted?
There are estimates, but we think around 6,000 vehicles were converted and many thousand remain on the roads.
Many thousands are still on our roads, which means that still the Department of Transport not entirely doing its job as recommended by the Public Protector to actually get rid of them off our roads. Now, in essence, what happens here? Because if you're saying you've got about 6,000 of these vehicles on the roads and a couple of these taxi owners obviously now in trouble, are you going to take a sample of them? Are you still taking submissions from some who possibly could be facing that situation right now? So that they can form part of this class action?
Yes. We have a representative sample of class members who we think would be representative of the broader taxi industry, of individuals who would have bought these vehicles. We want to go through the initial consultations with Toyota. We're hopeful that some sort of resolution can be reached there. But if not, the class action would be announced. It would go through the formal court process, and we would be looking to recruit and bring in other clients here who would make part of the class action.
Yeah. What about those families who've lost their loved ones inside these vehicles? Do they have a case here with you as well?
It's tragic, the amount of loss. We have cases with straight roads, and we have a vehicle that somehow loses control. We have police reports that actually show that in certain instances there, it was through drilling the holes in the base of the vehicle that carbon monoxide got into the vehicle, and the driver of the vehicle actually passed out. And we have many deaths like this. We believe that there would be claims against Toyota for this, And our intention is to look at this in the future, and there may be a possible class action for these individuals as well.
What about vehicles that were sold via non-franchise dealers? Because Toyota will say, well, a bulk of them, when we couldn't meet the demand, were actually sold by other dealers, not us.
There is a lot of factual material here, and as I say, the web is complex. There is some indication on the evidence that we have seen that second-hand car dealers were issued with buyer numbers. This is very unusual, and were essentially buying these panel vans and converting them. This would be quite convenient to do for a large corporation like Toyota brands, like Toyota South Africa, as it's a third party essentially doing the conversion. They can wipe their hands clean and say, well, we sold panel vans.
There is, of course, a new issue that was brought again by Herbie, by the way, who is a former banker who actually whistleblowed on, yes, on the text one around ambulances now that are being sold by Toyota South Africa, or panel vans being sold and converted to ambulances. Similar problems. They are not built for that particular function. In fact, by all accounts, they will also collapse and crumble, and there will be a danger to the passengers, yes, in the vehicle. Are you looking at that case, yes, to join it with this, or are you going to look at it, yes, separately?
Yes. I mean, Henny de Beer has really done a public service here for bringing this to the public protector's attention, and again raising this additional issue with the illegal ambulances. It is a tragedy that from a period from 2005, when the company knew about this, that we are still seeing that these vehicles are being converted. Again, we think there would definitely be a case here for victims in those vehicles, but often at times, you know, the purchase of ambulances is through government departments.
That's right.
So there's a failure there as well.
And I'm sure those should go under SABS, and they should be approved. If indeed it's a process that is followed under public procurement, that means there's some failure here to an extent, according to those who actually test the standards.
There certainly is the first failure is the failure to recognize, as Toyota has known for an extended period of time, Toyota Japan, that is the primary shareholder in Toyota South Africa, knows you cannot convert a panel van into a vehicle to transport individuals. It's not built for that. And the recognition essentially there is that Toyota South Africa knew at the time that they could never get these permissions. Yeah. And despite that, the vehicle was released into the market.
And of course, the view that there is different regulation when it comes to ambulances as opposed to passenger vehicles, how true is that? Because that is the defense that I think Toyota is going with as far as the ambulances are concerned.
Again, our primary focus at the moment has been on taxi owners, but you can play this out. You have a bed at the back of the ambulance. If that ambulance crashes, the long and short of it is there is no roll cage on that vehicle. It will crumple in. There are purpose-built ambulances, and they have a roll cage. It goes back to the earlier point. These are tin cans on wheels. They're not suitable to transport people. They're certainly not suitable to transport injured individuals.
Appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming through.
Thanks for having us.
All right, that is Alex Spoor, attorney at Richard Spoor Incorporated. We'll turn our attention in a moment to employment, youth employment to be in particular, why businesses should participate in the YES program. Your afternoon update continues after this.